Yeah, hi, I'm Lauren Webb. I'm 31. I was actually born in country Victoria. We moved to the Gold Coast when I was young and I was raised there. I actually decided to move to Cairns to study accounting a year after high school. So I did my first year of university on the Gold Coast and then I did the rest of the years in Cairns, and that's where I met my husband, Jake. So I was only 21 when we started dating. He was the first boyfriend, real boyfriend, adult boyfriend. And moving away from home was interesting, being in university. It was so much fun though. Cairns was an amazing place to live, so many tourist things to do. And yeah, nearing the end of my university, we both worked at Woolworths, and it was after a Christmas party he asked me out and we started dating. And I was quitting to go work at a hotel in reception. Getting close to finishing university and being an accountant, hopefully in hotels, but that's not where I ended up. And he was quitting to go join the army. He was 25 and he'd been a manager at Woolworths for a long time and decided it was time to go into infantry. So I met a few other friends, but not through university. I met most of my friends through Woolworths and their other friends that they went to school with. In Cairns, we still keep in touch. They were supportive throughout dating, wedding, kids, army life, and after. So it was really great. We still visit all the time. Jake was born out at Cloncurry, and his dad ran pubs. They came to Townsville, and his older sisters always lived in Townsville then, and he moved with his mum and younger siblings up to Mossman. So he did a lot of his years. He grew up in Mossman, and he moved to Cairns with his fiancée and his young son to work in Cairns for a few years. And then after that broke down, we started dating. His son was 4 at the time. Looking back, it was really like a fairy tale. We didn't think we would actually stay dating seriously. We thought he's joining the army, we'll end things here. We'd only been dating a few months. I came down to Townsville for him when he was enlisted, so I was there for him being sworn in and going on the plane off to Wagga. And then I flew back to Cairns to finish studying. And then he called me a week later on his first day of being allowed to have his phone in Wagga. And he gave me a call and he actually asked me to start writing letters to him because he doesn't get his phone very often. And I said, yeah, actually I have a few letters that I wrote and I didn't think anyone would ever see them. So I sent them to Wagga, and he had a few notes in his field notebooks in the few times when it was hurry up and wait. You know, you got to wait in line to do all your training, whether he was at the range or outfield. So he'd just have little pieces of pages ripped out of his field notebooks, and he put them all in an envelope and sent them to me, and he spelt my name wrong on the first envelope. And so for the 3-4 months that he was in Wagga, we were actually sending letters back and forth, and I still have all of our letters, both of them, both sides. So it's interesting to see them and read them back every now and then. And then, yeah, he would have his phone every Sunday if he wasn't outfield when he was in Wagga. So he had split the time between calling me and calling his son, who was 4. So he would call back to Mossman to talk to his son and his son's family on that side. And then he would have to go to church because that was the only time you got your phone. So when you went there, it was like trees, all these people, they'd just enlisted, and they'd all be standing at attention facing the one way on their phone doing their phone calls home. Then the time would be up and they'd all have to go into church because that was the only reason you could have your phone was if you were going to church there. So it was interesting to see that when I got there. It was after a couple of months that he invited me to Wagga for his march out, and I realised things were really quite serious between us. It was really special to be at Wagga for his march out and see his son again. And Jake's dad was there and his stepmom. So they got me in the gates really quick. They're like, no, this is Lauren Webb. She's coming in with us, like as if we were married already, but we'd only been dating about 4 or 5 months. It was very cold in Wagga. He marched out in June. And then it was on to Singleton for infantry training. I think that was longer. He didn't finish until about September. when he got posted to Townsville, which was lucky. He wanted Townsville or Brisbane because Townsville was the closest spot to his son. But Brisbane, he has a brother in Brisbane, so that would have been really good too. He just would have had to fly to see his son. And yeah, he asked me when he was at Singleton to move in with him if I'd consider moving from Cairns to Townsville for him. And I said, this seems really soon and early. Like, we've been doing letters and phone calls once a week, but you've already asked me to move in. He's like, no, that's normal. That's okay. And my friends were really supportive because they'd known him a lot longer than I had. So I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I moved towns, packed up what little I had in my apartment. It fit in the back of his ute, and suddenly I was living with him. So, and his son came to stay with us at the same time for the school holidays. So the same time moving me in, his son was staying for a couple of weeks as well too. So I was kind of, it's not stepmom duties, but it was definitely not your normal moving in with a man when you first start living together, because his son was there as well too for the first couple of weeks. So the first year we lived together, it was just him and I, and he was outfield maybe 2-3 weeks and then home 2 or 3 weeks. It was great. I got my study finished, starting to plan a life together. Then the decision was made that he would raise his son full time. So Lucas moved in with us full time, and then Jake went outfield the next week for 3 weeks, and I suddenly had a young son, and I had to get him to grade 1, first day of grade 1. And his sister that lives here really helped me out with that because I had a new job, so she did after school care for me. So we had a lot of time. Lucas had a lot of time with his cousins, and Jake would be home 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off kind of thing. He spoke to his mum a lot, which was really supportive for him. But otherwise, essentially, I was Lucas's main parent for a lot of the time for that year. And then at the end of the year, I was organising Lucas's 7th birthday, and Jake was deployed. He was on training deployed, and he got really sick on the boat when he went to Vanuatu to help. I think it was an earthquake or a volcano. Must have been a volcano. And then they were going over to New Zealand for an exercise, very much like Talisman Sabre. And he was so sick. And they realised suddenly, this is not normal. We need to drop you off at a proper hospital. And he was in so much pain, and he was 20 kilos lighter. And it took him 2 weeks to realise, what has happened. And they said, look, we think we've found something on the ultrasound. You need to go home. So he was medevaced from New Zealand to Brisbane and then to Townsville. And he knew. And I had to go on base and pick him up. And it was a scary couple of days. Scary couple of days of him telling me he's being medevaced and waiting for him to get here with the doctor and the nurse that was sent to get him. And I took him home and I said, what's going on? And they said, look, they've found something on my liver. We're just going to have to wait and see. And within a week, he was on chemo. And he was told he only had a 50% chance of living 6 months. And that's not what you expect from a man that's just been deployed. But he was just half of what he was when I sent him off on that boat. 20 kilos off a very tall man, you notice it. So we started chemo. We organised Christmas as a final Christmas. Lucas's mum came to help look after Lucas more and support us. Jake had cared for his mum while she was dying of cancer back in 2009. So we knew what was coming, but I'd never seen it. So we prepared for last Christmas, and he lost all his hair and was very sick. Army was really good. He had all the sick days he could ever need. All the medication was taken care of. We had a lot of doctors, so he would have to have an Army doctor, but they're not specialists in this, so we'd have the specialists as well too. And he had a surgeon from private hospital, which is what you get. We weren't part of the public health system. He's Army, it's all covered in private. And we had a last Christmas and a big hurrah. My sister-in-law, much like this, having a bigger backyard, hosted 22 of us, I think it was. She had her auntie staying in a caravan there. She had 2 cousins as well in another caravan that just pulled up. So it was a good thing she had lots of space. All the kids were around. Jake's brother from Brisbane came up with his girls as well too. So there's lots of cousins. It was great. It was a really big hurrah. Jake was quite sick though and had to sort of go inside and stay in the aircon and stuff now and then and have rest. And then the chemo just kept going and he would be in pain now and then. And then he would go off his pain medication and just be sick. I'm like, you're still alive. We went on a holiday to Bali, do a first holiday together. We'd been together 3 years probably by that point, and we'd never been on a holiday together. So I said, look, we'll do this. You know, we don't know how much time we've got. He almost didn't make it on the plane. He had another turn. He would have one every about 6 to 8 months. He'd get extreme pain. I think it was from the cancer growing. But he was determined. So he just sucked it up, took some pain medication and got on the plane and off we went to Bali. He wasn't sure about it, but it was the only holiday we could afford. We were early 20s. And the bed was so big. My husband's 6'3", 6'4". He was tall. He's 2 meters tall. And the bed in Bali was so big he couldn't reach the other side of the bed. You think a man that tall, you would reach out and you'd be able to touch your partner on the other side of the bed. It was so big. He's just like, you're lost over the other side of the bed. It was buffet breakfast every morning and the lovely pool and everything. And we're both quite outdoorsy fitness people. So we booked for a hike in Bali. Cancer patient books for a hike because that's what he wants to do. And so because he had a turn that we didn't expect, we just had to postpone it another day or two. But we got there and he wasn't the last up the mountain. It's a volcano. He was not last. We were at the front. He was struggling a bit, which is unusual. Normally he was outdoing me always, no matter how sick he was or how much treatment he had. He was always fitter than me. He was even fitter than most of the people in infantry, from what I know of. So we made it up the hike for the sunrise, coming over the mountains in Bali, which was lovely. And so he'd survived his first year of cancer and chemo. He had radiation and was sent to Brisbane. They said things were still not shrinking, the tumours. It was in most places. And then he was surviving another year and then they said, well, the treatment's not really slowing it down anymore, so we'd try different treatments. I lost track of how much. I think at one point he'd said he'd tried up to 7 different sort of combinations or drugs, chemo drugs and specialist trial drugs, and there was 2 lots of radiation as well. And so we'd just try the next thing or he'd take a break from it, depending how sick he got. And then he just kept living. So I decided we're not going to live in fear of this cancer. We kept trying to do what we wanted. So I saved up a house deposit instead of marking off the bucket list as you do when you're told you're dying. We saved up a house deposit. And I said, the next thing is I want a baby. I always wanted a baby with him. From the first time I moved in and started living with him when I was still young 20s, I decided this is the man I'm going to marry and have a kid with. And I'd spent so long raising his son. I wanted Lucas to have a brother or sister. So Jake tried a new immunotherapy. There was no idea on if it would work or not because he had such a rare cancer that they just didn't have a treatment plan for him. So they said, this works for other cancers. Why not give it another shot? So he was trying immunotherapy, and because it changes your immune system, it's less of a chemo then, you know, it's not drugs, it's trying to use your own body to fight it. And he was doing so much better. He was like that, as fit or fitter than a lot of infantry. And the infantry have to keep a high fitness, and they would get in trouble. It was quite funny for him to come home from work and say, I'm beating them, and they would get in trouble. If you're not doing as many push-ups or running as fast or carrying as much as the guy that's got cancer, get your stuff together, get fit, guys. So he was really proud of that, and it was great camaraderie for him to be beating so many of the men in infantry when he was so sick. Because it was hard. He couldn't be an infantry soldier anymore. He also didn't want to not have a job. He couldn't change roles. You can't transfer him anywhere. So they didn't know what to do with him. But they were good men and didn't want to let him go. Didn't want to have to force him to medically discharge, which was nice of them. The paperwork, though, was hard. The policies didn't fit our very unique circumstances of a fit, healthy man that you're being told is dying, which was hard most of the time. To look at such a fit, healthy man that can outrun you, do more push-ups than you, to be told to look at such a healthy man that he's dying. It's hard. He didn't want anyone to look at him and to know that he was dying, or to think that he was dying, or be treated differently. So they did what they could to let him do different roles, to work whatever sort of hours he needed to. The doctors put a lot of restraints on it, so he couldn't actually train with the men, which is hard for a man to be in infantry and kept separate from them. But the rank was really supportive and saw him as an equal, which was helpful because he never got any rank. He stayed a private his whole 7 years of enlistment because they couldn't promote him because he couldn't go outfield because he was dying. But he was doing that role anyway with no recognition from anyone else but the people he was directly with. They were so appreciative of it. It made a difference to the men he served with. But it also was hard to watch too. He deserved rank, but he never got any. But also it has consequences after his death too. His life insurance and his super is connected to your rank. His ability as a husband and a father to provide for a family is based on going up the ranks and getting promoted, but he was never able to because he was dying. But he lived for 4.5 years after his diagnosis. We went to several funerals for others in one RAR in that year. You don't know when your time is up. Good men died through accidents or committing, but they could go for rank, and you never know when someone's time's up. But when he was on immunotherapy, it was like he wasn't dying. I was hopeful that maybe he could just stay on that for the next 5 years. He didn't look like he was getting worse. I was like, maybe we can just live like this. The tumours just stay where they are, as they are, and we'll just be able to live this way. So I convinced him that I was always going to have his child, and so we did that. We didn't know if he was going to live 5 years or 10 years. He looked like everyone else. So we decided to start trying for a baby. We had to get the doctors to say that it was okay because he'd had so much chemo and radiation over the last 2 years. So we had to have doctors sign off, and they were in shock because no one planned for it. they said, oh, you're terminally ill, that's it. You know, they didn't expect him to last more than 6 months, so no one planned for, if he survived, how we would have children. And he already had one son, so no one considered it. It was a unique set of circumstances. But the doctor said everything should be fine. And that New Year's, he proposed for me on New Year's Day in Brisbane. And I didn't expect it. We were planning the house. I'd saved up all our money, and we were building a house, and we were trying for a baby. They were my steps, my plan. I was very planned. I was like, we can't have a baby unless we've got the house. Can't be renting forever. So we were trying for a baby and planning for the house. And he proposed on the 1st of January, 2020. And then we signed for the mortgage was signed a month later. And a month after that, I found out I was pregnant. We were successful finally. We were worried it would take months. You never know. And I had a plan for that too. The doctor said they would be able to help and do a few things and make sure that we stayed on track, because we didn't know how long he had to live. And the longer it took me to have her meant less time for them two together. So we were lucky it was so easy and natural. And so 2020 was a big year for everyone. We were lucky in Townsville because COVID didn't hit us as hard as other places. I worked from home, which was helpful. Being an accountant, I could work anywhere with a laptop, which was great because I had so much morning sickness. And I was going for a promotion at work at the same time. And I didn't want to tell them I was pregnant. It shouldn't matter, but sometimes it does still. It just plays on the back of your mind. But I got promoted anyway, even after telling I was pregnant. They were really supportive. And we got married. We had to change our wedding day. We got married at the Mercure in Townsville. It was beautiful. We had so many beautiful photos there by the pool or by the bougainvilleas. And John Danzy from 1RR, he was the padre at the time. He married us, which was lovely. He also did Jake's wake. It was good that he hadn't been posted out yet, that he could do both of those things for us. Yeah, we got married in July. It was the end of the school holidays. We had about 10 kids had to be there. You can't get married without the kids when there's so many kids and cousins. Lucas stood next to his dad. He actually passed out during the wedding. I was so keen to get married. I was 23 weeks pregnant, so the dress had to be altered a little bit, but you couldn't see my baby bump at all. And my sister was pregnant as well too. She was 6 weeks further along than me, so you could see her baby bump. She was my bridesmaid, and my older sister was my maid of honor. It was great to have my two sisters there, and I had my little niece on my side. She was the flower girl. And Lucas stood up next to his dad, and then we had his brother and his brother-in-law. And during early stages of us doing our vows or something, Lucas has just gone a bit green in the face. And my mum and Jake's stepmom started clicking their fingers and looking and trying to get someone's attention, because everyone in the front row was too busy looking at us saying our vows. But the grandmothers had noticed that he doesn't look so good, and he just went down on one knee. Like he was already trained in the army. The kid just knew you took a knee. And so the grandmother's sort of like, oh, because the two men standing beside him didn't notice. Good uncles. Did not notice. So they just sat like Lucas to the side. I didn't even know it had happened. Sat him to the side, and of course one of them's got lollies in their purse for him. So he was okay. But it had been a long, hot day for July, surprisingly. Jake was okay. He'd almost died 2 weeks before the wedding. Well, it was one of those turns. Every 6 to 8 months, he would get a lot of pain, I think, from rapid growth from the tumours. And he was in hospital again. he would only ever be in hospital for a couple of days, and he would climb the walls trying to get out again. His sister that lives here would often break him out. She didn't work as much as me. And she would rock up and she's like, all right, yes, take all the instructions. She's like, great, I'm getting you out of here now. She was so much help, taking, toothpaste up to him, the shaving kit, change of clothes, comfort things, sneaking in extra food for him at the hospital because he wanted something specific. And then she would get all the medications and the instructions and drop him off at home. I was like, great, you're home. I didn't have to go to the hospital tonight. But it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that hard. Despite having cancer, I wasn't a carer. I never had to be. He was only ever sick for maybe a week or two, and he never wanted the help. He was only ever sick for a week or two at a time, and then he would wean himself off the medication again, off the pain medication, still taking chemo and looking after himself. But yeah, he took a turn just before the wedding. And I was pregnant and emotional. I'm saying to the doctors, how do we get him out of here? I've got all this family coming in from Cairns, my grandparents from Victoria. They were trying to get across the borders to get to the wedding. My mum was in New South Wales. They had to get clearance to get across the borders to get to Townsville during COVID. We had a lockdown, first ever sort of one of Townsville, restrictions put in place. If we had the wedding on the Friday, as we planned, 10 people could go. And they'd sort of let us have 1 or 2 extras because they were facilitating it or they were a child. But if we had it on the Saturday, we could have 50. Perfect. We're going to change it by 1 day. Everyone's still in town anyway. Everyone had to stay for a couple of days. So we made it to the wedding. It was an amazing night. Jake was on pain medication, so he couldn't drink. Several of us were pregnant, so no one could really drink. But we still had such a big party of it. All the girls kicking off their heels and dancing. It was about 10 young kids, Lucas being one of the oldest, playing and running around. It was amazing. Didn't get to have a honeymoon. Within a couple of days, I was back at work. We were preparing to have a baby and building a house. School was back in, so Lucas was off to school. Jake was back at work. And then Lily was born. Oh, no, we moved house and then Lily was born. Luckily, the house was built in enough time before she was born. So it was a really, really big 2020. She was born the 1st of November. It was a long experience. I went in on the Friday to be induced. I called him and I said, my water's broken. They said I got to stay on the ward though. He's like, okay, I'm going to get some more sleep while I can. They won't let me up there. So he came up Saturday morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, dropped Lucas off at his auntie's because it was our week to have him. So Lucas went to Auntie Nick's and Jake sat with me all day during labour and things weren't going so well then. He's like, oh, we better plan what's going to happen because I'm dying and this isn't going so well. And the nurses just looked at him like, could you pick a better time, mate? And I was like, no, we're both pretty practical. We better figure this out right this second. We should have figured this out earlier. So we're sitting in there deciding that his sister Nick was the best to look after the 2 kids. And then I went to a C-section. And then Lily was finally born and they held her up and she was so big. She was 8'9". It's no wonder I was the size of a house, I felt. She was a big baby. And then she had trouble breathing. So Jake went with her to NICU and she was in the NICU for 23 hours. And then they didn't update Jake very quickly because they wanted him to focus on the baby, but I was not doing so well in the surgery. And it was a bit scary over there. And then he's had to rush back over to me into recovery because it wasn't going so well. By the time they had me fixed up and stable by 5 o'clock in the morning, I think that's Sunday morning, 5 a.m. Sunday morning, he's like, all right, I think I need to go home and start taking care of myself. I need my pain medication, my chemo and that because he didn't bring it up Saturday morning because we didn't know it was going to go that way. But we were both finally there and okay. Lily still was having trouble breathing, but they were taking care of her. She was stable, and I was finally doing okay and going to make it. So, but it was a really scary time for him. And then Lucas got to come up to the hospital and meet his baby sister. He was all elbows. He was only 10 years old. He was very much, looks always so much like his dad. Tall and skinny. So he's all elbows. Trying to hold his little baby sister, put a pillow on his lap and lay this big baby on him. So it was amazing. Couple of days, got out of hospital. Jake got to take extra leave with me, which was good. And then by Christmas, he started radiation to try and help with the symptoms that we'd noticed when we got married back in June when he had the turn. So by Christmas, he was on radiation, and we had to worry about him having radiation and having a baby in the house. And it was Christmas time again. We made another Christmas. We didn't have Lucas for Christmas that year. It was his mum's turn, which was such a shame because it was Lily's first Christmas. But that's modern families these days. You can't always control all the parts of it. But Lily was so little. She was only 6 weeks old. Lucas was there for the next Christmas though, which was a lot bigger and brighter. She was 1 by then. It's amazing to look back and think all the Christmases we did get. So yeah, he was still enlisted in all that time, still working when I could, mostly in the morning, able to pick his son up from school every day, which not many army wives get. When they're home from field, you get that. They'll have early knock-off, but he had early knock-off without having to go out field. But every 6 to 8 months, he'd be in hospital for about a week. They were just always trying to keep it at bay a little bit, manage the symptoms. If they thought, I was always hopeful, so was Jake, that if they could shrink it enough, they could do the surgery. He couldn't have surgery because it was stage 4 and it had moved from his liver to the lymph nodes in his back, and it was surrounding around his spine. So it was too difficult a surgery. So no one could do it. The other people that have his rare cancer, if it's caught well, it's just on the liver. You just cut it out, your liver regrows. And then you just have some more treatment to try and stop it from coming back. But because they couldn't do the surgery and get it all out, we just tried different chemos, targeted drugs, radiation to shrink it. But I don't think there was any hope ever. When Lily was almost 1, the symptoms were getting worse, more frequent hospital visits and the pain from it growing. And the tumours were quite large. He didn't look like he had them. He was fit and had a six-pack, you know. But inside in his abdomen, there was so much tumour. And so he got sick after, when Lily was still little. I was still on maternity leave, and he got a cold, and he decided to do some yard work. You could never stop the man. He was always doing stuff. Like, he would still hike a hill while taking chemo. How many people do that? So he was doing some yard work, and I came home and it looked like he had heat stroke. That night he passed out getting up to go to the bathroom, and I said, that's it, you got to go to the hospital. And it was another week-long stay. He had myocarditis. The cold was attacking his heart. They think it was a combination of that cold and the chemo or whatever drug he was on at the time. So they stopped all medication. No chemos, no radiation. Just wait it out. And then his symptoms got bad again at the end of the year. He'd had such an amazing 6 months of not having to take anything. when you have to take a handful of medication morning, lunch and night, it gets annoying, it gets tiring, and you know what you're taking is poison because it makes you so sick and tired. So it was an amazing few months of nothing because his heart needed to recover. And then they said, look, you're doing so well, why bother trying anything? We know none of it's working. We don't think it's even going to stop the growth. So just enjoy and live. Then his symptoms got worse. So his surgeon that originally diagnosed him said, do you want me to have a go at removing it? I didn't want him to. So we went to the family annual camping. He spoke it over with his auntie and his sister and his brothers. And Jake decided he wanted to try surgery, remove as much as he can. It'll either go like wildfire or reset the clock. Resetting the clock would have been amazing. Lily was almost 1. To reset the clock, we could have got another 4 years, 5 years, 10, we don't know. So we did the surgery, and it's nothing like what they explained to us. They said, oh, you might be in ICU for a few hours after you wake up, or maybe a day, another couple of days on the ward, and then you'll go home. He was in ICU, I think most of that week. The pain medication wasn't working. They took him in for a second surgery the day after because I just kept complaining and whinging and crying to the doctors and nurses. He's in pain, fix this. And they said that he shouldn't be. He's got an epidural, he shouldn't feel anything. He's not in pain. I was like, he's barely talking to me. He's shaking, he's shivering, he's in pain. Please help him. And the doctors took him back for another surgery to see if something was wrong. And Jake didn't think he was going to come back out of that second surgery. They took a very, very fit, healthy man, what looked like a fit and healthy man, and did a major abdominal surgery, and it looked like it had killed him. But he recovered. He was so strong. So it was about a week in hospital. I got compassionate leave at work because it's ICU. They couldn't believe what was happening. It was nothing like what was explained of just a couple of days in hospital. We've got great pain medication. He'll be okay. Don't know if it's going to reset the clock or not, but we can do this surgery. It was so different to experience to what we were told in the doctor's office. And Jake wanted to try that surgery, but I didn't. I was so scared of what if it went wrong, and it nearly did. The doctor said to me, Brace, his body's had too much. If the pain medication isn't working, that's it. His body's just going to give out. But he came home. They had removed so much internally, they actually removed most of his stomach. I didn't know what that meant. Jake didn't know it had happened until 5 days after. It's really different to live without a stomach. Your whole life changes around that. What you're allowed to eat, what you can and can't do, your stomach to recover. I had to hold his stomach so he could blow his nose for like the first month, I think. He couldn't have sugar, and he was a man that used to sit at Woolworths on his lunch break and eat an entire mug cake. He was known for it. It was mentioned at his wake. He would sit and eat an entire mug cake to himself. God help you if you tried to share it with him. Or the boys at work would know he was in his office at work because they could smell the KFC. The amount of, he was just always eating. And suddenly he had no stomach. He couldn't eat those things or eat the way he used to. You can't go out for a dinner date anymore. He couldn't eat those things. Everything was so different, it changed. We didn't know how we were going to get through that. It was so different to what we were explained. But he did. By Christmas almost, he was suddenly able to hold Lily again. It was about 2 months where he could not hold Lily, even for her first birthday. Couldn't hold her, couldn't lift her up because his abdomen had been completely sliced down the center. And suddenly things were turning around. By January, he was doing a workout with me on the front driveway while we'd listen through the window to see if Lily had woken up. And we were trying to get fit again together. He was encouraging me so much because that's what I wanted to do after Lily was born. We booked a holiday for us to go to the snow because we went to the snow for our first wedding anniversary. And he loved it so much. He was so excited about it. He wanted to take his sister and their family and show his nieces how to snowboard. He wanted to share that with them. And he was really good. And we all booked the flights and I reserved the hotel. And he was just so excited and smiling about it. And this would have been about January 2022. It had been 3-4 months after the surgery. We'd learned how to eat differently, how to cope with this. He was finally putting on weight after he lost about 7 to 10 kilos being in hospital. So he weighed as much as me. But as always, he turned a corner and was doing better. Then he went for a checkup, I think. And they said, look, there's more spots turning up randomly in your abdomen, more cancer coming up. But they said, oh, it's only little spots. So we didn't worry too much. He asked about treatment. They said, no, look, you got no stomach. You're still recovering from surgery. There's no chemo, radiation. There's nothing right now. Just recover. And then maybe we'll think about treatment, I think. Well, there was no treatment ever. I don't know what they plan to do. And then in March, something went wrong. I think it started to spread like a wildfire, like they said it could. Those little spots within a few weeks were massive tumours. He didn't get a clock reset. The clock didn't reset at all. His abdomen was starting to fill up with fluids. He went to the hospital to have it drained. Then they sent him home for a week of rest. I said, look, it's starting to fill up again. You look pregnant. Your belly is full of fluids again within a week. So we called the hospital. We called palliative care because palliative care here in Townsville is not private hospital as he's meant to be. There's only one, and that does for a regional area. They take care of all the people out west too. So it was COVID time still, masks and everything a little bit. So the doctor said, oh, we'll just do a phone consult. And he spoke to a nurse instead of a doctor. So I worked from home that day on the Wednesday. And I dragged the couch into my office because he just wanted to be there with me. But he was so uncomfortable. He should have just stayed in bed, but I couldn't work in the bed beside him. So I dragged the couch in beside me and he just slept and dozed on the couch, on a 2-seater couch for a man that's over 6 foot tall. Didn't really work, but he loved just being beside me. And I tried to make some food that he could eat and sit beside me. He wasn't really moving, couldn't do much. He was so lethargic. Then I'd take care of Lily from daycare. I'd feed Lucas. We have family dinner. And his sister came to check on him and check on us. And I said, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse again. She said, what did the doctor say? And I was like, well, he didn't actually go see them. It was a nurse over the phone. So her and I decided that he had to go to the doctors the next day. We were going to pull rank. That's it. Us women had had enough. You were going in whether you liked it or not. So Thursday morning came around And I got Lucas off to school and Lily off to daycare, and he wasn't moving out of the bed. I was like, when's this doctor's phone call? I told work, that's it, I'm not working today. He needs me. The doctor's called. He's like, not well. I'm in a lot of pain. They tried to discuss how much more he could take. He was on so much endone and other pain medication. And then the doctor said, I think I can hear something in the background. What's that? He's like, it's my wife. My wife's really upset. And I was just crying to the doctors, saying it's not okay. He's not well. The doctors are like, your wife's really upset. Let's find you a bed. So they found a bed in palliative care. I don't know what happened. It's palliative care. So a bed became available, and they said, get here at 12 o'clock. I called his sister and I said, look, they're finally taking him. She dropped everything to come. So while I was trying to get organised, to get his things organised, for once I was the one taking him up, I think they had a conversation and he knew how sick he was. He said, put the call out. So his big sister did what she needed to do for the family and started to call everyone. His brother organised to leave work and drive from Brisbane that night with his girlfriend all the way up here. She called the other sisters and his dad and his cousins up in Cairns and his auntie who was out at the mine site. We got to the hospital and he had lost so much weight for not eating all week. He couldn't even stand up to stand on the scales. They got him in the bed and they put a lockbox of pain medication through his leg. And Jake said, when you get these lockboxes, you don't go home. I should have listened and understood, but I didn't understand really. And by Friday morning, when I came back after getting Lily from daycare and feeding her and giving her a bottle and getting her to bed and taking care of Lucas, I went back the next morning. I missed the doctors again. And he was finally looking better. His pain wasn't there. He wasn't frowning. His shoulders were okay. And I thought, okay, we've got this under control again, like every other time. This was our 6th or 7th rodeo. We got this. He was able to have icy poles, but that was the first thing he'd had in over a week, was just an icy pole. And his sister came to visit and she said, oh, look, maybe it was panic and we're okay. But the family thought, oh, we're already on the road. We'll just keep going. We're already on the road. So we'd leave him at the hospital again. I'd come home and take care of the kids. He would call me at night and he could watch the baby monitor on his phone. And then he wanted me to start making some arrangements. I said, okay, we can do that. The doctor said, you might have 6 weeks or 6 months. We don't know. By the time we went back on Saturday, his brother had finally made it to Townsville and his other cousins were getting into town. And his brother came into the room to see us and Jake was resting, finally. And they thought they'd missed everything. They thought it had happened because that just broke down to them. And he woke up and they're like, oh, thank God. So he got to spend the day on Saturday talking to his brother. He's his best friend. And all the family was there for Saturday night for dinner. There's like 9 of us in the room. You got 3 young kids. You got a baby. She's only 18 months old. It was like a proper party in this room at palliative care. They probably don't normally have that much family in there, but they don't mind. The more the merrier, because you don't know how much time you have. Then something didn't feel right. He still wasn't eating, but he was on a lot of pain medication. I said, I don't think I want to go home tonight. So for the first time, I had my 18-month-old daughter stay with her auntie, and Lucas was with her. And I stayed the night with Jake. And as they were leaving the hospital, he started to be sick on Saturday night. And it didn't stop until about midnight. And the nurses said, look, this is probably it. We need to call someone here to support you. We didn't know what to give Jake. And I was sort of put in charge because Jake wasn't able to talk suddenly anymore. And it all happened so quick. We couldn't get a doctor. We had to wait for a doctor from emergency to come over to up his pain medication. They had to give him all sorts of other things, I don't know. And suddenly he was in his bed, no longer throwing up. Didn't really look like he was in pain, but he also wasn't moving anymore. And I said, I don't know how to make these decisions. You need to call his sister. His big sister's the one in charge of all this. And she was on the other end of the phone just about all night, even though she had 4 kids in her house to take care of. And she said it's whatever the two of them decide. Just kept passing the buck, trying to figure out what to do for him. They came in. My sister-in-law, she called her sister-in-law to come watch all the kids. And so she got back to me at about 3 a.m. in the morning, on Sunday morning. And he was gasping and he was dying. But he didn't die. He didn't die until Tuesday morning. We sat in the hospital all day Sunday and Monday with him just... It took a long time. And I called the army to say, look, this is happening. But I didn't know who to call. I called the guard room. The poor guy that's put on guard is just an infantryman, I'm sure. And he didn't know what to do with the information. I didn't know who was telling anyone of rank. I didn't know if anyone was telling the hospital either, the base hospital. Jake's surgeon didn't know from private hospital. Jake's oncologist, his cancer treating specialist, didn't know. I was like, I'm out here and there's all these people swirling around that are involved and none of them know. So I just called the guard room. And they tried to pass the message along, but it was a bit like Chinese whispers. So on Sunday morning, I think it was, when I made the phone calls, Jake's phone sitting beside me, messages ping off, and it was a message that he'd died to his own phone. But he wasn't dead, he was beside me. Then Padre finally called me and he said, oh my God, what has happened? How'd we not know? I'll come support you. Are you at home? And I was like, I'm still at the hospital. He said, what do you mean you're at the hospital? Everyone had thought Jake had died. So Padre came to stand at the hospital with me, and he was on holidays, but he dropped everything, made arrangement for his kids to be taken care of while he cared for us. So we started making arrangements and funeral arrangements as my husband's lying there dying. We eventually sent the family home, and it was just me and his big sister Nicole there when he finally passed, because it took so long. It's the longest and first time I'd been away from Lily. Lucas was so young, he was only 10. He went to stay with his grandmother in Mossman as it happened. I should have been the one to tell Lucas that his dad had died. But he was in Mossman and that's where he wanted to be. And so his grandmother had to tell him. He took it so well. Children just deal with things differently. Lily didn't really know what was going on. She didn't even really ask for him. She just knew that he was gone. As she got older, she asked more.
She knows about the army uniform and that when we drive past base, that's where Daddy used to work. Everyone experiences it differently. I went back to work after 3 weeks. Others take years off work. You need it. But I needed that distraction, the same as I'd had throughout 4.5 years of my husband going through chemo and medication. Work was a great distraction. The kids are so busy, but they're at school and doing other things too. We managed to do so much in our time together. From the time we started dating in January 25 through to him dying in April 2022. We were together just over 7 years, only married 21 months. We didn't make it to our second wedding anniversary. He'd started to get excited, thinking that he could do a sneaky trip to New Zealand and the ski slopes there for our wedding anniversary before going to the snow in August with his family. But he didn't make it. He got to see Lily turn 1 though. But he didn't get to take Lucas to his first day of camp. That was only a few months later that I had to take Lucas. I was the second last parent to drop him off. I was just running late as always, as it is being a solo parent suddenly. I even took him to the wrong place to start with. Lucas hadn't even finished primary school. I went to Lucas's primary school graduation with his auntie. We were both there to support him. He was such a good kid about it all. Sometimes they just hide it so much better. They cope with it differently. People always say, how do you do it? But I didn't know any different. I was thrust into being a carer for Lucas and his stepmom essentially. And the next minute, Jake's sick. And then we were just sort of ignoring it. It was the best we could do. And he would get sick on and off, but we just kept living. It was such a crazy combination of live like you don't have tomorrow, mark everything off your bucket list. But also, he didn't want to be sick. He didn't want anyone to see him as sick. So we lived like he wasn't dying. It's so hard to do both. And then afterwards, it was just a new battle. I was so used to all the others before it. Legacy came out here to this house that we built together. And they sat with me and explained what they could do and how they would help and what they wanted to do to help us young widows. I didn't know how many there were. I didn't look into what being a widow was until after. There was so many different supports out there. And it was so reassuring to see other people's ramblings of how they were coping, whether it was their first couple of weeks or whether they'd been like that for months and years. People telling you the second year's harder or it's the third, or people repartnering in under a year and being married again, or some people that were 30 years being widowed and never repartnered. How people lose their second or third partner, I couldn't imagine. So Legacy came out and they explained things and I said, I want to get really involved. And they explained about the young widows and there was a surprising lot of us and there were so many kids and that's what interests me. How many other kids were growing up without a dad? I wanted my kids to see that, but I wanted to see those kids to see that they were going to be okay. Because that's all you needed to know, was that it wasn't going to affect the kids in a major way. It always will, but to see those other kids that lost their dad 10 years ago or more, to see that they were doing okay, that's what I needed to see. So they had events. they took us to this new place. It was like a cafe and pottery. So they had all the young kids lined up and start painting and doing things, and us mums could step back for a minute and say hi, and I could meet another widow. I didn't know any other way to meet a widow. So I got a chance to talk to them and hear how they coped, what their life was like, different ways to make it easier. The understanding that ice cream for dinner is normal. Some days you're holding on by a thread and that's okay. To know that they'd done those things and lived those days was helpful. And it was great to see their kids as normal and just the same as everyone else. I think it was good for Lucas. Talk to other kids. Know that he wasn't alone in what he was going through. It was hard with Lily. She was the youngest. She was 18 months when Dad died. So she wasn't even 2 yet. She was the youngest. But the other mums assured me their kids were just as young as well. They were 1 and 2 when their dads died as well. And it's hard to do events and go to things when your daughter's so young and still in nappies and needs you all the time. You don't trust anyone to look after them. So it was hard the first Christmas parties and stuff like that. But it gets easier now because the older kids play with her and she can do tea and those types of things at the barbecues. It was hard at the beach. She wanted to go swimming, but she can't swim yet. And I'm not going to have the older kids watch her just yet. I'm still the youngest, one of the youngest widows. So I'd go swimming with all the kids at the Christmas party. And the other mums are just like, you've got too much energy, you're doing too much. But I was like, well, why my kids are this young, yeah. But their kids are getting older and almost teenagers now. So they don't have to go in the water anymore. But it's good. We catch up once or twice a year, all the mums, the widows.
How does that work?
You draw on it when you need it. So I decided to go on a holiday with the kids. I was like, we're going to keep living. We're going on a holiday. And I booked a cruise ship. That wasn't a smart idea. It's a very small room with 2 kids and not a lot of room. And you got to keep a watch of them. You can't let them just run wild, even though there's nowhere to go. And it was really hard being like in a small room with them. And so I'd message and reach out to them. And by the time we got to Brisbane, we're staying in an apartment and it was raining. So I couldn't do the activities that I had planned to do with the kids and keep them entertained during school holidays. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go home and be surrounded by our own toys and things. And I would message and reach out to them. And they've done it before. They've been there. They're like, you just plan a different day. Here's some ideas for different trips to do. Just do a movie day in the hotel. It doesn't matter. It's okay if you need to change flights and come home early. So they were really supportive of that, really helpful. I've come close with a couple of them and we'll reach out and talk about different things now and then, different struggles. And it's not always about being a widow. It's just about being a mum, a solo mum. So they've been really great and supportive. So we're all on different paths. Some are repartnered, some are not. It was in that first year, out of the blue, Nicole from Legacy called me just to check in. And it was a hard week. It was around the kids' birthdays. So they were checking in and they give a little bit of money to help the kids for the birthday presents. And if I needed help for the school fees or their activities. And I said, I really need help. It's Lucas's birthday and everyone's so busy. I bought him a jungle gym because I thought he would like to be outside and doing these things. And his dad would have loved it. But I got to put it together. It's like I've bitten off more than I can chew. And I didn't know what to do. And she's like, I'm happy I called. I can help you with this. I was like, what do you mean? I'm just complaining to you because you're someone to listen to me right now. She's like, no, this is something I can actually help with. And the next week, she gave me a call. She's like, when are you home? I've got 2 army guys that are going to come out and build this for you. oh my goodness, you can get this done? Because I had no one to help me build this thing. I'm pretty handy, but it was beyond me. I couldn't follow it. And so the army checks in with her every so often, and they say, we've got men, strong, fit men. Do you have any jobs for them? And so these two, I'm not even sure what they do, but they just came and they built it for me. This big jungle gym, and it took all of us to lift it. They built it on the front driveway, and they lifted it and put it in the backyard for me. They spent the entire day for me building it for Lucas for his birthday. And I had no idea they could do that for me or help me with it. It was just, needed someone to listen to me that day. And she listened, but she also found a solution for me, one I didn't know existed. It really helped that year. It helps to tell the story. And I know it was all about the cancer and what we went through, but the army was always there in the background, and it was challenging. It was so helpful, and we were so grateful for them. But it also had its challenges too.